Volkswagen, StokesVW.com, JBandGoldwaterShow.com to find us. And, of course, make sure you download the app, the JB and Goldwater app, where you can watch and listen and purchase a JB and Goldwater season ticket. It's only $5 a month. We'd love you to do that. And we appreciate those who have. Darren is to the right of your screen. I'm Jamie. We're here until 2 o'clock this afternoon across all social media platforms at JB and Goldwater and individually at Sports Radio JB. And at Darren Goldwater. JC Shurburtt right there in the center of your screen. Yes, sir.
I'll say this. The 10 minutes, if you missed it, what Jamie and JC were just talking about after the show, we'll cut that up. We'll get that out there. We got a text. It's the easiest way to get in touch with us, 843-321-8893. He said, damn, JC, I could charge through hell with a water pistol after hearing you like that.
Oh, man, nah. It's, it all kind of came together for me after listening to Connor Shaw yesterday and seeing the former players from the winning era and kind of the stand they took. You know, the players are the lifeblood of your program, and the guys that were there, you know, Steve Spurrier didn't talk about all this, okay? You know, so when he left, there was some frustration, and I was frustrated too, because he doesn't sit out there and talk about, you know, like he's not Urban Meyer that talks about the players have to take ownership of the program and this, that, the other. He's just like, well, we're going to go try to win us a ball game. And so it wasn't like Spurrier was this rah-rah guy, not even like Lou Holtz, you know. But it's more like how he ran it, that it was implied. And, you know, South Carolina has a good individual player culture. Players don't get in trouble. They go to class. They make good grades. They work hard. But the difference between the Spurrier era and the Muschamp era is there was way more emphasis on team. You know, Spurrier didn't give a flip if you got to the NFL or not. I mean, he did, but, you know, it wasn't set up like an NFL training camp. It was set up like a college football program.
Right.
And that culture and that ownership, and a lot of the Spurrier guys say it, and, you know, some people inside the program have said it. Look, Will Muschamp got to South Carolina, went from 3 wins to 6 wins to 9 wins, and then a little bit back to 7. And then he had a lot of Spurrier's players, not a ton, but a few guys there. And then all those guys left, and he recruited the current group, and you see what's happened. And these guys are more talented than the players that Spurrier left behind. And the one thing somebody told me one time that coached with Coach Spurrier that makes a lot of sense. You know, he's a great play caller, you know, good, innovative offensive coach. Sometimes it comes across like that's all he cares about. And probably that's what the most fun part of the job is for him, you know. But the secret sauce is Steve Spurrier never put pressure on his players to win. There was no rah-rah speech, go run through a wall. He played I Hope You Dance. You know, hope you dance, you know, and you know, why not us and all that good stuff. What was the song before the Bama game? It was like, you know, it was some kind of If You Can Wish It or Dream It. It was some female country singer and stuff. And he never put pressure on his players to win. Not at Florida, not at South Carolina. People don't realize this. It's like, you know, just play your best. Just go out there and play your best. Keep playing. That's why South Carolina could get down 17-0 to Missouri on the road, and Connor Shaw goes in there and leads them back. That's why at the Swamp, Peyton Manning and Tennessee are up 27-13 in 1995. The final score 62-37. It wasn't that he was just dialing up ball plays or he got dialed in. Yeah, that happened. It was that his players just knew if they kept playing, something good would happen.
Yeah.
And the swagger, you know, Steve Spurrier also, they go to play a good team. The play to Marcus Lattimore, the first touchdown against Bama, that was against one of Bama's really good linebackers that Spurrier was All-American. Spurrier, early in the game, none of us realized it at the time, he'd go right after the best player on their defense.
Yes, he did.
Right after him. And 9 times out of 10, people were surprised. The kid was surprised or whatever. 9 times out of 10, it would work. And that just creates confidence.
Yeah.
You know, it just creates confidence. And so it's very telling. And it all kind of came together with the Shane Beamer thing. You know, the type of culture, the team culture, the confidence, the sky's the limit type of attitude that they had during that era you know, you can trace that back to Beamer, not only in terms of his experience at South Carolina, but in terms of who he is as a person. And so that's why. And like I said, I'm not Team Beamer and carrying his banner or anything like that. But people want to know why he's in the mix without, you know, people want proof or, oh, it's just, you know, bad, you know, it's a big risk. You know, that's why he's in the mix. You know, that's why he's in the mix for the job. And that's why, you know, compared to Twitter and message boards and all that, he has a lot more support behind the scenes than people do realize. And that's everybody from players to coaches to former athletic directors to high school coaches around the state, all of that. There is a groundswell of support for him from people that get it and understand, you know, what the true needs of this program is.
JC, you know, I echo your comments because, you know, I mentioned to Darren earlier in the show today. I said, you know, you what you need here is a quote Carolina guy, and I compared. You know, bear with me for a second, but I compared this opportunity to what Dabo did at Clemson, and when Dabo was hired, JC, there wasn't one person out there who believed that hiring Dabo Swinney this was what was going to happen, winning national championships, playing in the playoff and things like that. But there was one person who believed it, and that was Dabo Swinney. He believed it from day one, and we've laughed for 12 years at some of the stuff he spewed, JC. I've done it. You've done it. Darren's done it. Every fan out there has done it. Oh, my God, what is he talking about? But it worked. And I mentioned to Darren, there were bowl games prior to the college football playoff when they would, you know, play whoever, you know, LSU in the whatever bowl, and they'd win. And he'd stand in the field, in the middle of the field after the ball game with a camera in front of his face, and he'd say things like, "We just beat a national championship caliber team." And everybody's like, "No, you won the Citrus Bowl." Mm-hmm. No, we beat a national championship caliber team. But that's what he was doing. He was creating this imagination, this belief that at Clemson we can be and we will be national champions one day. Just look what we're doing, and everybody bought it. And I think that's part of this Shane Beamer thing. And I know that there's fans out there. I'm not oblivious to this. I get it. There's fans that don't want to hear any coaches being similar to Dabo Swinney because of their hatred for their rival. But I tell you what, if you hired somebody and you win a couple national championships, you won't give a damn who they're compared to, let alone if it's the head coach at Clemson. And for those that laugh when you say things like winning national championships at South Carolina, that's exactly what the point of this conversation for the last 25 minutes has been, JC. You have to have a guy that believes that. Because if you fall short, it's like the whole shoot for the moon. You'll land amongst the stars. If you fall short, you ain't that short, hopefully. And that's the way Spurrier thought. And I said something earlier to Darren, and I want to get your take on this too. And maybe this is one of those bumper sticker type quotes, but I believe it. If all things are created equal, and you have two candidates you're down to your final 2 or 3 candidates for this thing, you say, look, they've all got something that we love around here. And I don't know who to hire. My question would be very simple to all of them, JC. It'd be one question, and it would be, can you win a national championship at South Carolina? And the candidate who stutters, he's out. And the candidate who looks at you and says, no, I can win 2 of them at South Carolina, that's my guy. And I feel like that comment needs to be associated with what you said to finish that last segment and what you said to start here about Shane Beamer. Again, we're not waving the flag for him or whatever. Ray Tanner and that staff, they're going to do a fine job, and whoever this next hire is going to be. But that's the reason why a guy like Shane Beamer is involved in this, because he's the guy that's going to give that type of response. And that's the type of mentality that you have to have moving forward, and not this crap of, well, the ceiling, like Chris Fowler said, who I respect, the expectations need to be lowered. No, that's not true, because Steve Spurrier already raised those expectations, and those players in that era believe in those expectations, and someone needs to bring the Spurrier spirit and re-inject that into this program right now, and that's the type of guy who could do it.
Yeah, and I'll say this, people, and look, I'll be honest, Shane Beamer and Dabo Swinney are different types of guys.
Absolutely.
They're
Totally.
both young and energetic and can relate to kids really well. But I mean, they're not. The closest thing to Dabo out there is probably Will Healy at Charlotte, if you want to personality-wise and stuff like that. Billy Napier certainly doesn't have the same personality that Dabo does. But here's the similarity. Dabo Swinney, just like Danny Ford before him, and this gets lost on all Carolina people. Clemson, they went out and hired a Charlie Pell, and Clemson went out and hired Ken Hatfield, who had it rolling at Arkansas, and they went out and hired Tommy Bowden, who was the number one hot young coach in the country, and none of that worked out for them. The two guys that have worked out for them are guys that were at Clemson, that know Clemson, that care to know the culture around there. Clemson's not Alabama, folks. It's different. They would be, if they weren't winning, people would be like, boy, there's a bunch of weird folks that pull for that team, or not the people, but it's the hill and the tiger with the eyes and the little chants and stuff, and the fact they're in the ACC and there's stuff. It's not Alabama, but they're on an Alabama level because Dabo Swinney had a vision for that program, just like Danny Ford did, and a plan to get them there, and they did, and no disrespect to Danny, because I think that's another guy that had never been a coordinator, promoted from within, that built a powerhouse. Dabo is to the nth degree. You look at the facilities he's built, the vision for the building with the slide, all in, putting the chips in, recruiting nationally, but also making great evaluations and developing guys, hiring two coordinators that do what he wants to do at Clemson. When Chad Morris left, he said, that's not the Morris offense, that's the Clemson offense. Everybody laughed at him and, Tony Elliott's going to be a disaster. Well, Tony Elliott's gotten it better. He's fine-tuned it. It's the Tony Elliott offense now, and then you look at Virginia Tech, and I can't stress this enough. Shane Beamer's whole football life has been about more with less. Virginia Tech is more with less royalty. And you look at the Hokies and how Frank kind of built that. And look, it's not going to take that much time. Frank had to sit there and have losing seasons, and they got in the Big East and everything was fine. But you look at them, what did they do on both sides of the ball? And then this is where people need to really kind of think about this. Virginia Tech was dynamic on both sides of the ball. They were different. South Carolina needs to be different. Bud Foster's defense alone, very, very different. On offense, that was a versatile attack that was wide open from time to time, but always based in the run game and being physical. And it could accommodate any style quarterback, from Michael Vick to Jim Druckenmiller. Think about that. They had Druckenmiller and then they had Vic. Worked for both. I mean, and if you're South Carolina, you look at that and you look at the evaluations they made, how good they were on special teams and how they valued in-state talent. Virginia Tech is not like Georgia Tech. Virginia Tech is basically the State University of Virginia. It's Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University. That's where all the normal kids that can't get into UVA go, in Virginia. Very good, in-state football there and all that. And they said, hey, we need to start keeping these guys at home. And they go into North Carolina and they'd evaluate and they'd recruit. And Frank Beamer was very organized and he did it with class and integrity. And that program should be any program that's struggling. They should aspire to be like that. And people like, well, they weren't in the SEC. No, they weren't, but they had to play Miami every year, West Virginia every year. And Virginia, I mean, that was the time when Miami was tougher than any SEC team, And so I think if you look at Beamer's life and who he is and all the reasons, that you should hire him, it makes perfect sense. Now, there's no guarantees. And look, like I said, Billy Napier probably has a great plan too. And I think he's a heck of a coach.
Absolutely.
But, people, the question I get the most is why in the world are they even considering Shane Beamer? And then the question is going to be, why in the world does he have more support internally than just about any other candidate? Those are your answers for that, as to why. And I know it's difficult because there's no win-loss record to look at. But that's why.
Well, let me, and I know you got something. But let me just interject this real quick, because I look, I know that people are hearing that. I've already seen some of this on the internet. Well, already saw somebody reference JC. Well, I think he knows Shane Beamer. That's irrelevant. I didn't ask JC who he wants to be the coach.
I just deleted that post. Look, and anybody that continues to do stuff like that's going to get banned.
That's not the point of this.
I'm tired of listening to people to think that my personal feelings are steering any kind of opinion on coaches. This is my job. I've done it at the highest level. Okay, nationally, not just in the South Carolina market. Okay. I know what I'm talking about. And for people to sit there and say that about me, like this, he's just doing this, that, look, hey, I'm good friends with Bobby Bentley.
Right.
Why am I not, pushing him for the job? Come on, man. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. So let it be known you're getting banned. If anybody continues this crap, that's very personal and a lie and slanderous about me on social media, the Big Spur, wherever.
Well, and let me, and you're right, and you should do that. And let me interject why this conversation about Beamer has been so lengthy today, because people don't know the real story. That's why.
Yeah.
Because this is the guy that everybody's asking the questions about. All right. Everybody looks at Jamie Chadwell's record and goes, well, hire Jamie Chadwell. Because nobody gets past the damn record. Look at Billy Napier. Look at Hugh Freeze. Look at this guy. Look at that guy. Dig up Newt Rockne. Go find where Bear Bryant's dead. Let's pull him from the grave and get him here. Everybody's looking at the record. And that's who they want to hire based on the record. And everybody is just shooting down candidates because they don't have a record and assuming that because they don't have a record, they're not a qualified candidate. So there's a reason why we're trying to make sure that you have as much information as you can. So when you do go post things and make your voice known, because everybody has the capability of doing that you have enough information to say something that makes sense. That's why. There's no other reason for that. I don't know who's going to get the job. I don't know who's being favored for the job. JC, you don't either. We don't. But we do have some leads on things, and we do know a little bit of who these guys are, and we do know why they're being considered. After that, the decision is on South Carolina. It's not on you or Darren or me or Scott Eisberg or Wes Mitchell or anybody else in this world. We're just trying to fill in the gaps so when you post things or when you say things, you know what the hell you're talking about. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. And I will say this too, my whole thing about Beamer is, everybody's just looking for a record or whatever and wondering why he's a candidate. Well, that's why. I mean, you look at the Vegas odds. I don't influence those. Oh,
you don't?
And he's sitting there third, so there's a reason for that. And people just, they want to shoot it down. And look, I want to be clear. If you're a Gamecock fan and you don't think it's a good hire, I don't blame you.
That's fine.
I mean,
That's okay.
I think that, after what Carolina football has been through this decade, the roller coaster and the rise of the other guys in the state, you've been through a lot, and I respect that. I'm not gonna try to change anybody's mind on Shane Beamer. Now, these people that say Mike Bobo can't call plays, that's a different story. That's not understanding play calling or facts. But if you don't want Shane Beamer as the coach, I don't care. Make your voice heard on the Big Spur. But, don't sit there and tell me that when I'm giving you the reasons why he's in the mix, which factually he is in the mix, and I had nothing to I wish I had that kind of power around the University of South Carolina. I have nothing to do with that. I'm just telling you why he is. And I'm telling you that the support for him, if you go back and you connect it to the Spurrier era, the players and the culture they had during that time, the support for him is directly related to the fact that he could reestablish that culture, and he has a vision and plan to take South Carolina to beyond that. Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for that when you're talking about how does it get done at South Carolina as opposed to here's my plan that I'm going to try to do anywhere.
So, and I interrupted you, Darren. I'm sorry. Poor Darren's like, oh, Jesus.
Sorry, Darren.
Guys.
No. So here's why I'm cool with it.
Darren's like, God, I need a drink.
Well, I mean, what time is it? I got 36 minutes. So all the candidates are going to have their pros and their cons. And what I've enjoyed about the conversation is really what you were just saying here. It's when I hear the name Shane Deemer, I'm like, okay, I understand the ties. I understand the ties to the Spurrier era. I get that he is a coach in the making. But it's hard to wrap my head around the whole thing. But then an explanation like this makes it seem, oh, okay, that's why he's a candidate. Now, there are negatives as well. Mm-hmm. There are negatives and positives to every guy.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to turn this back to Muschamp here because everybody loved Muschamp. The players loved Muschamp and still do, apparently, especially those close to him. So if there was such a bond between Muschamp and the players, how did it get to a point where the players weren't playing hard for Muschamp or for themselves as a collective unit?
I think that when you look at the Muschamp era, and you can do an autopsy on this, and you sort of found that out, after, in a way, when we talk about the culture being good at South Carolina, over the years when Holtz was there and early Spurrier and Brad Scott, there was some kind of, knucklehead type characters that would, get in trouble, get arrested. Goodness gracious. Fail, flunk out, whatever. And that was common in a lot of programs, but you don't have that. These kids make good grades. They go to class. They do what they're supposed to do. They're, hard workers. But I think the difference between what Muschamp was trying to do, and this is not me talking. This is, based on conversations with guys that were there for both staffs. And so take it for what it's worth. I'm going to dive into Muschamp at some point, probably next week, and really kind of break it down as best I can because there's a lot of mystery there. Is that when Spurrier was at South Carolina, it was all about team. He could care less sometimes about, guys going to the NFL. It was just all about the team, and there was that mindset and that confidence and that swagger, like I talked about. With Will Muschamp, obviously Muschamp's not an idiot. He wasn't sitting there going, well, we don't care about the team or winning. No. There was almost too much of an emphasis on winning based on individual development. And I think that is why you saw some guys opt out. And that's why you saw some guys, say what they said about the program and all that. And I'm not saying South Carolina's got a bunch of selfish players in the room because I don't think that's the case. I just think that, maybe the mindset was a little different. And then he really got no help besides Mike Bobo this year. His coordinators failed him yet again. And so I think that's another thing to look at. But, these guys that, are playing right now, we'll see kind of, see how things may change with Bobo taking over. I have my doubts, but we'll see how that may change.
Well, he certainly, I think, has set a different tone this week, JC. And I do think that, I from what I understand, the whole locker room misses Will Muschamp, and they're going to. But I know that right now there's an accountability phase going on in that football program with the players and the coaches and the staff and everybody in between because Mike Bobo is doing everything he can to finish this year. I think we've forgotten something here. There's still 3 games to play. There are still 3 winnable games to play, and South Carolina can still finish 5-5. Now, is that reality? Probably not. But I would be very two-faced to sit here and tell you after all the stuff we were saying earlier about dreaming big and this, that, and the other to not expect to win the last 3 games. I mean, you just have to try to find a way to get yourself in that mindset. And I think Mike Bobo's doing the best he can. He said for the second consecutive day, though, earlier, JC, based on practice today, we can't beat Missouri this weekend. Hope that's not true. But we'll kind of see where it goes. I want to start to wind this down because I know that we all have things to do, and like you in particular, Darren and I don't.
You already said I got to get a drink in my hand.
As you mentioned, and we'll leave the coaching stuff there because more's going to turn, and I want you to all listen to JC's Inside the Gamecocks podcast and be subscribers of the Big Spur and things like that. As it pertains to the rest of the season here, JC, let's not forget, hopefully everybody shows up to watch him play. A couple personnel changes yesterday. Was Zaquandre White having to head to the secondary to help him out with the opt-outs, and then they've got Jordan Rhodes shifted over to the defensive line. I wonder if that was something that Bobo's been wanting to do, or if he just chose to do that because Makia Scott opted out. I'm not sure. And then your take on the opt-outs, because, look, opting out was designed for COVID. These players have all been safe from COVID. They're not, quote, opting out. They're quitting, in my opinion. I think they're quitting.
Yes.
This isn't an opt-out.
Yeah.
I think you're quitting.
They're
So,
given
what's your
a
thought?
term to use, but yeah, they're quitting.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
JC Horn is a few months away from being a millionaire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I get that.
Multi-millionaire. And he's done everything he can, although, and this is kind of when it goes back to the team versus individual thing. There's times JC doesn't communicate on the back end or whatever, but he's really good at one-on-ones. I mean, he's got those down, so that's, that kind of made me think, I don't blame him for opting out. I think Izzy McQuamu, and I may have said this before the season, my number one concern with him is that, he had that one big game that everybody in the country watched because it was a noon kickoff and Georgia's going down. And then they put him on all these draft boards and stuff like that. Honest to God, he hadn't been that good. And he really hadn't been that good except in that one game. If we want to be right down to it. So, I don't know who's telling him to opt out and go pro. But, and the pros sometimes do draft guys on upside. They're very arrogant up there. Look at their quarterbacks they take. And he probably get drafted, make some money. And I hope he does. He's an in-state guy, and decided to come to South Carolina and all that. So everybody wishes him well. But, I don't know that they're going to miss him other than depth because John Dixon was out playing him the whole year.
Yeah.
RJ Roderick opting out. Coach Spurrier used to say, well, we're going to let him rest this week. I think with the season RJ's had, and I'm not, I know everybody's critical of him and all that. I'm not giving up on RJ Roderick. I think, you go back to when he was a freshman and somewhat as a sophomore, he's almost regressed a little bit, but that potential's still there. I know he's from down there in the low country.
Hey, JC, I think that if he was in that defense under Spurrier, I think he would have been a hell of a Spur.
Yeah, that's exactly what he was. And so, you know what? I would probably, I'd probably give him a pass. It's been such a rough year. I was told he reacted very emotionally to the change. And then that's really it. I mean, I don't think they're missing any of these other guys. Yeah. I don't think they're going to miss Makia Scott. It's a shame if he doesn't come back that he quit because he had a good future, but we'll see if they can get him back or whatever. As far as moving Jordan Rhodes to defense, Rhodes wasn't, the offensive line's been playing so well. Rhodes isn't getting on the field. He's a big athletic kid. Why not? They need beef on the D line. They need some size. And then Zaquandre White, I think, epitomizes, what you want. And I'm going to mention this because I don't want people to sit there in their minds as we move forward, start thinking Spurrier recruits and players do this. Muschamp recruits do that, and then generalize everybody as people like to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's not the case. It's just kind of like the overall attitude with some of the stars. Zaquandre White's one of the most selfless players that Carolina's got, and he doesn't have to. He's the number one JUCO running back in the country. He'd already gotten moved to defense at Florida State, and that's why he got out because he wanted to play running back. He gets, comes late, gets hurt, sees Fenwick and Harris pass him, for lack of a better term. If anybody, on earth, on that roster, if anybody on that roster needed to get discouraged and bitter, it was Zaquandre White, because he probably, had he been healthy, could have come in and rock and rolled, and all that. And so selflessly, this guy's been playing gunner on the punt team and doing a hell of a job. Yeah. And then they need him to move to safety, and he did it. And he's going back to running back and back to offense. But, this team needs more Zaquandre Whites.
You're right.
And less Izzy McQuamu's, in my opinion.
I think it's well said. Very well said. Yeah, and Bobo pointed that out. He said he is a running back. He's going to be a damn good running back at South Carolina. As a matter of fact, whoever does get the job is going to have some
lot of good running
backs at South Carolina. I mean, like really good running backs. And I want to make one more quick point here. And then, JC, I do have 6 games. If you can pick them in two or 3 minutes, that'd be great, and we'll let you move on. But I want to make a quick point about Connor Shaw because you're right. His tone yesterday seemed to re-energize some people who watched him. And I think that's obviously because of what he said, but it's obviously because of who was saying it. And it was Connor Shaw. And he is the favorite son at South Carolina, and he more likely always will be. As you think about the future of the program, it's going to be, I hope whoever takes over really finds a way to keep him in the fold. And I don't know if that'll be on the field role or off the field role where he was. I mean, he's just kind of been promoted because of circumstance right now. But let me just kind of throw this out there. Let me just kind of throw it out there. Name a human who is better suited to coach Luke Doty and Gunnar Stockton than Connor Shaw, because they are all the exact same person with different names. So
yeah, I hope, the talk is that Connor may want to go more into administration and all that, and I understand that there's more stability.
Well, we'll find out after about 3 weeks.
There's more stability there than in coaching and stuff, but I tend to think Connor's selling himself short. I first met Connor Shaw, I think, when in 2002, guys, I was a young high school sports reporter for the Times in Gainesville, Georgia.
Wow.
He and J-Bo were knee high to a jackass. That's the old term my dad used to say. And Lee Shaw took the job at Flowery Branch, and it was a new school. It was like an expansion team, right? And they decided in that county that Flowery Branch and Chestatee, which also was coached by somebody with Gamecock ties, Matt Fligg, whose dad, Jack Fligg, was on the Carlin staff when George Rogers was there. They decided that year, a bunch of 9th and 10th graders, throw them to the wolves, let them play varsity. And Lee Shaw started that program and from nothing. And I moved on to Rivals and embarked on my career, sort of covering recruiting and college football. And always kept up with it. And Flowery Branch ended up playing for a state title when Connor and J-Bo were there, and he built that thing from nothing. Then he goes to Rabun County, which was awful before he got there, and took those guys. There's not a lot of athletes in Rabun County. You got to kind of find them, and took those guys to the Georgia Dome or Mercedes-Benz or wherever. And now he started a program at a private school in Gainesville called Lakeview Academy. And so he's got coaching in his blood, and his brother, J-Bo, is a good coach too. And I think Connor, if he decides to do it, not only would be a great coach, I think he could do it at the highest level of college football. And you want to talk about job stability. Last time I checked, those jobs pay between $3 and $5 million a year.
Right.
And I think he'd not only win, but win big, because he's got that kind of leadership and all that. And obviously his knowledge of the game is superior, both in terms of the mental aspect and schemes and offense and all that. So that's my take on that. I know that's a little long-winded, but that's my take on that.
I think it's a great take. You've been kind of good at that today. But by the way, speaking of coaching, due to the decent reporting of TheBigSpur.com, really good notes on the Napier family and his ties, obviously with his father being a coach in Georgia as well. Mm-hmm. Billy Napier knows the state quite well. Again, I am regurgitating the information from JC Shurburtt's website to all of you, which is why you should be a member of TheBigSpur.com. But Billy Napier, very well respected in that state when it comes to recruiting as well. So we'll see where this goes, but I've loved all this. All right, I got 6 quick ones here. Only one in the SEC. It's Carolina's. So we're kind of driving around the country today, but it's a good little drive. I like some of these places. Quickly, noon on Fox tomorrow. They're big favorites, but it is a top 10 matchup. Indiana at Ohio State. 20.5 is the spread.
I'm going to go, man, I really don't want to do this. but I'm going to go with Ohio State. And I love Indiana, man. I mean, I think Tom Allen's he's the national coach of the year as far as I'm concerned. But
and another name.
Ohio State's too good, in my opinion.
They are.
And I think it'll be probably like a 44-20 kind of deal.
Okay, so Ohio State in the cover. By the way, Tom Allen, a name that people have mentioned with this job as well.
Yeah, now look, behind the scenes, I've heard nothing about him. Okay. He may be one of those 20 or something, but like if he gets in the mix, then it may not end up being a Spurrier Beamer kind of deal. I mean, that's the type of guy, folks, and he's from the Hugh Freeze coaching tree, so everybody be happy about that. That's the type of guy that could be the fly in the ointment for those that think it's a binary choice.
I think he's got some pretty hefty Indiana ties. I think
he does.
I think he's happy in Bloomington.
But Darren.
You're not going to win a whole ton there either.
It's Indiana is probably probably the two worst jobs in the SEC are what, Kentucky and Vandy.
Yeah,
it's sub Kentucky by a good ways, and probably not by much better than Vandy. I mean, think about that. That's Big Ten East. If you rank just the jobs, not the teams, Indiana be below Rutgers and Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
By the way, speaking of Kentucky, I saw somebody on social media yesterday with the question, why not Mark Stoops? And I thought, should I answer this?
Mark Stoops is a heck of a coach. People think because he's beating Carolina like a drum, but no.
No.
Mark Stoops, good coach, but no. I think he's at the place he needs to be if he's going to turn down Florida State,
Yeah, it's not happening. All right. How about this one? Speaking of candidates, Appalachian State at Coastal Carolina. Chanticleers are 3.5-point favorites.
Oh, that's down.
Yeah, at Brooks Stadium, noon on ESPN2. Another nationally televised game for Jamie Chadwell and Coastal.
Look, man, I'm gonna go. Sometimes when you have an upstart and they play the big boys on the block, the upstart gets beat down. And App State's been the big boy on the block for a while, and I just have a feeling App's gonna go. Ruin Coastal's perfect season. I'm going to say by 7 points, like 37-30.
37-30. Wow. All right. By the way, I missed one, so I added one to your slate here.
Look, I haven't gotten a Coastal game right all year, though.
No.
I mean,
just pick them to win.
Spread-wise, win-wise.
So you know what's coming. You know what's coming here. You know what's coming. Coastal beats App this weekend. They're going to be the Roars are going to get a little bit stronger for Jamie Chadwell to end up in Columbia from some fans.
And then it can be the Coastal Liberty game, and the winner gets the job.
Oh, that's true. Coming up on December the 5th. The Louisiana game this weekend has been postponed due to COVID, so Billy Napier will not be coaching this weekend. In the Big Ten at 3:30 on ABC, 10th-ranked Wisconsin. They're on the road at 19th-ranked Northwestern, 7.5-point favorites up there in your neck of the woods, JC.
I'm going with the Badgers there to now that's close. I was in Wisconsin over the weekend.
To cover?
Do I want Wisconsin to cover? Do I think Wisconsin's going to cover?
7.5-point favorites. Are they covering? I don't think.
Are
they? Okay. All right.
I mean, look, they covered against Michigan, didn't they?
Yeah.
They're on a roll. And Gamecock fans need to take a look at that program because that's what you get when you get an identity and you believe the vision and the plan and you follow through. It can lead you to, that sustained success.
Great point.
Their campus is actually similar to USC's. It's state capital and all that, but there's a gigantic, beautiful lake right there in Madison. It would be like if Lake Murray were kind of right there at Gervais Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of thing. So, but I think the Badgers are really, really good. And I think nobody really wants to tackle them this year. Northwestern's been good too, but I'm going to go with Wisconsin to win and to cover in Evanston.
I disagree with you. I think that floating the river in Columbia is just fine as opposed to floating on a lake. All right, Oklahoma State at Oklahoma, Bedlam, 7:30 on ABC. Oklahoma touchdown favorite at home against the Cowboys.
I'm going to this feels like one of those games where, Oklahoma was struggling earlier and they've kind of put it together.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma State's, kind of lost some. I'm going to go Oklahoma by 2 touchdowns.
Ooh, yeah, there you go. Good pick. How about this one? Haven't been able to get out there because of COVID stuff and postponements, but hopefully they'll be able to play it late night, 10:30, ESPN. Southern Cal on the road to take on the Fighting Jake Bentleys. Oh, in Utah. Utah is a 3-point dog at home to Southern Cal, who's kind of squeaked it out a couple of times this year to open the season. But you don't just walk into Rice-Eccles Stadium and beat them on a Saturday night. JC, who wins?
Poor Jake Bentley, man. I mean,
I know, man.
Rocking and rolling, and no warm-up game, just Trojans coming in. I'm going with the Utes because USC struggles on the road. I'm believing Jake's going to have a great game. Maybe some of these people that hate Jake Bentley, which, by the way, somebody told me the other day, Will Muschamp owes Jake Bentley his salary. If you look at the record with Bentley and without him, it gets ugly. But, maybe some of these people that hate Jake Bentley, they're going to be a little bit more impressed if he lights up Southern Cal as opposed to lighting up Arizona or UCLA. So I'm going with the Utes and believing in my boy Jake, thinking that he'll make some things happen.
I'm with you. Go Jake. Go Jake. Jake beats the
other USC.
No. Southern Cal. Beat Southern Cal. All right, at noon on the SEC Network, this line has shifted in favor of the visiting team now. LSU is at Arkansas, and they're now 2-point favorites in Fayetteville at Razorback Stadium. I think Arkansas was 1.5, 2 to start, but it's shifted 3 or 4 points here. Who wins?
It's a tough one because I'd like to take LSU and believe, but I'm going to go. Is the pit boss back from his COVID quarantine, or is Barry Odom still coaching? That's my question.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with this. If it's still Odom, LSU wins. If the pit boss is back on the sidelines and they can just let Odom call the defense and Bryles dialing up the offense, I'm going with the Hogs because unlike South Carolina's defensive staff, a lot of teams have come up with a lot of good plans to stop LSU this year, namely Auburn, and Barry Odom stopped Ole Miss. So, I think the Hogs defensively, and after that butt whipping they had last week, I think they'll stand up and be able to stop LSU. And, the great Felipe Franks will have another good football game, and the Hogs win. Let me just but if Odom's head coaching, that's a different story because, I think last week their defense kind of suffered because of that.
And finally,
Go Tigers.
Missouri and South Carolina, 7:30 on Saturday night, of course, on the SEC Network alternate channel. Missouri, this line is actually it's at 6.5 now. I think it was up around 7. It's come down just a shade, but who knows? Who knows if either team will have enough players to play? I don't know. They both say they will, so we'll find out. And we all know the story with South Carolina. Missouri, though, hasn't played in quite some time because of COVID. Their last one was that 41-17 loss against the Florida Gators on the road. And I think it's been 3 weeks, JC, if I'm correct on that, since they played a football game. So we'll see what they look like, see how rusty they are coming in to Williams-Brice on Saturday night. Does Carolina get back on track here with a win that they should have against Missouri?
I think that I just got an interesting text pitching Tom Herman for the Gamecock job. Wow.
Oh, my God. Are you kidding? What?
I think at South Carolina, as a player, and we'll find out about the players, you have to want to win this game every year. I don't care if you're 0-8. Missouri considers South Carolina their biggest SEC rival for some reason. There's a trophy. You lost the trophy last year because your offensive game plan was garbage, and you had a true freshman quarterback that gave up 2 touchdowns himself. Missouri's not superior to the Gamecocks. They have like an NFL-sized roster. They have 53 guys. So if they lose another one to COVID, they're going to postpone the game. But if you're South Carolina, you want to win it. And I think the Gamecocks, given Missouri's personnel losses, and I know Carolina does too, but I think with the run game and, the offense and all that, and I think the defense can at least slow them, South Carolina can win the game. Probably be close like it was 2 years ago. But, I think Carolina wins this one, probably drops Georgia. And, like I told everybody, you got to want to beat Missouri every year. Everybody always wants to beat Georgia. And you don't want to sit there with a new coach coming in going, we've lost 6 of 7 to Kentucky. So I think these next 3 are pretty important. And you're going to find out a lot about the character of some of these players.
I agree. I know one player who has a lot of character on that roster is Kevin Harris. He is 8th in the country in rushing right now with 817 yards on the season and, of course, 13 touchdowns now coming off that 5-touchdown performance. That's good enough for third in the nation. Javonte Williams from North Carolina with 15. We'll leave it there. JC, really appreciate you sticking around for a while today. I thought what you said was not just spot on, but very important to this conversation that needs to be had about South Carolina. Very informational. We are going to cut this, and we're going to put it out publicly afterwards. It will not be in our season ticket today. I think it's that important. I have kindly asked my producer over here to do that, and he said he obliged. So we'll give him a pay raise on that note. But JC, thanks, brother. Have a wonderful afternoon. Looking forward to listening to the Inside the Gamecocks podcast. And right now, you want to be a member at TheBigSpur.com because there's certainly plenty to discuss, and they're all over it. Thanks, bud.
Thanks, guys. See you next Wednesday.
You got it.
Later.
There you go. JC Shurburtt with TheBigSpur.com. All right, timeout.